Year 7. Today we're going to continue our work looking at breaking up numbers into smaller parts, really. We've been doing fractions, and fractions is finding a part of a whole. We're now going to move to a special type of that, which is decimals. And what decimals are doing is dividing up numbers into parts of 10, 100, 1,000, etc. All right? It's powers of 10. Now, you deal with decimals in various places, like with money, for example. We use decimals all the time for our cents. For example, if I was to show you, though, this, I think is helpful. I am looking up at how much space it takes up. How much space does 0.9 or 9/10 take up? Well, there's 10 boxes, and we're taking up 9 out of 10. It's still a fraction, but it's being expressed as a decimal is what we're looking at here. So a decimal is really helpful, really important, makes it easy to type it into your calculator, for example, and it allows for that precision of dividing up numbers. We've got a bit more work to think about, though. You see, when it comes to doing decimals, say, for example, I've got this number, 532.81, and that's how we say it. I can actually put it into a table like this. I hope you know what the place value is of each of these numbers. This is like junior school work, hopefully. So what are we looking at? We're dividing it up into the place value. Where does it go? So the 5, for example, would go in the hundreds column. And on your sheet that I've given you, you can now put this in. The 3 is 30, or in the tens column. The 2 is in the units column. Then we have our decimal point. All right? Then our tenths with the TH goes in the tenths column. And finally, the 1 in this number goes in the hundredths column. In reality, if I had a table like this, I could actually put a 0 in the thousandths column. It does not change the number at all because it's after the decimal point. It's like if you put a 0 up here, it still would not change the number. So the position of a digit shows its place value. For example, that's 532.81 in place value table. Let's keep going, because we also want to be able to order decimals. The number of digits, okay, after the decimal point can help tell us the number of decimal places. This one, for example, 532.81 has 2 decimal places. If I was to change that slightly and make it 0.01, then it would have 3 decimal places if we're dealing with that sort of question. So why don't we do some examples? Here's some examples. You'll need to copy these examples down because I haven't given them to you as we work through them. The first question is pretty straightforward. Sorry, the A is on the wrong line. But the question is, how many decimal places in these numbers? And hopefully you can see straight away what we actually have is 1, 2, 3, 4 decimal places. So the answer to part A would be 4. Okay? The answer to part B is 3. So even though it's a 0, it is significant, it is important. Okay? So it's 3. We're then asked, arrange these numbers in ascending order. Ascending means going from lowest to highest. So as I look here, sometimes I find it helpful to read out in my head what is the number that's there. 67.41, 67.14, 6.714, and 67.04. Now straight away we should be able to see what is the lowest number in this list.
6.
Yeah, you're right. You can see straight away for that question Okay, 6.714 is our lowest number. Sometimes I find it helpful to cross off so I don't get confused. I now know I'm looking at three numbers. They're all 67. So I have to go to the decimal. I look at the first decimal, and the first decimal, and I choose the lowest, which is, that's correct. Okay, so my second highest number, 67.04. That takes that one out. And now I've got to work out which one's going to be higher. You go to the first decimal place. And somebody called it out then. They said 14, or 14 we would normally say. So it's 67.14. And finally, our last one, of course, would be 67.41. That is in ascending order. To go up, to ascend. Question 3, though, is in the reverse. It's descending order.
Which means going down.
That is right. It's going down. So we start with the highest number first. However, this one's a bit different. And sometimes I find it helpful to rewrite the numbers so I can see what I'm comparing. So if I was to rewrite it, I could write it like this. And it hopefully makes it really, really clear which is the highest and which then is the lowest. What I have done is I've recognised some of the numbers have 2 decimal places. So to make it look consistent, I've just added a 0. So we've got 2 decimal places for all of them. Now we're going descending order. So which one is the highest out of these 4 numbers?
1.7.
Okay, great. So we can write this as 1.7. What will be our second number when we do this one here? Yeah. 0.85. You've looked and gone, 8 is the highest out of these, so it must be that. Okay, so we've taken out that one and that one. Which is going to be our next highest? Yes. 0.50. Even though an 8 is normally a higher number, because it's in the hundredths column, it's actually worth a lot less. So we then have 0.5 and then 0.08. That is arranging it in descending order. Year 7, understanding decimals is a bit like understanding fractions. It's a bit more consistent because you are only dividing into powers of 10. But that's what we're doing. We're dividing a number up into a smaller chunks or smaller parts to be able to then compare and do things with it. Let's get in. Let's do some work.